We're just about ready for our next session, Destination Focus, Investment Opportunities in the United Kingdom. This is to be a thought-provoking discussion between our moderator and presenter Rajan Datar and Christopher Rodrigues. Christopher is chairman of the Maritime Coastguard Agency and the former chairman of Visit Britain. I'd like to welcome Christopher Rodrigues to the stage and Rajan as well. Thank you very much.
It might seem odd to some people that we're even talking about investment into the UK. You would imagine that the UK would be very attractive to investors from all sorts of places, and we've been talking about how developing countries are going to be looking for investment. We talked to the likes of the Kenyan tourism minister, the Jamaican tourism minister, and the Jordanian tourism minister, and they were all interested in looking for funds and attractive investment opportunities. Can we hear all right? Yep. In terms of the UK, apparently investment has actually gone down since 2017. External investment has gone down. Can you see any reason for that?
Well, I think, excuse me, I have to declare something to start with. I am not a foreign direct investment expert, but I know a man who is. Always fortunate. I think it all depends on whose statistics you want to use for what purpose. But with that caveat, there was a 2021 EY attractiveness survey. 41% of the people they spoke to said they were, and they spoke to 600 companies, were intending to invest in the UK in the next 12 months, which was the highest score in Europe and the highest ever score for the UK. And the interesting contrast, and timing is everything here, is at the end of 2020, only 25% of people were thinking of investing in the UK. So there has been a marked change through the shock of COVID and the recovery. And if you look at the drop, our project count, we had the 2020, we had the second most greenfield FDI projects in Europe after France, 10 behind France, nearly 1,000 projects. And I think there is no question that the government is committed to supporting investment, but they are very committed to supporting investment in technology, in green growth, and in the place that tourism needs to focus, which is jobs.
Yep.
And if I might tell one anecdote to the people here who haven't heard it before. When I was appointed by the late Tessa Jowell as chair of Visit Britain, she asked me, how do you judge success in the tourism industry? So having been in the industry for a while, I said, that's easy, Mum. Heads in beds, bums in seats, and feet through the turnstiles. And she said, oh, that's very good. I haven't heard that before. I like that. So, well done. Good impression on the first day in front of the headmistress.
Yeah.
18 months later, I realized that from the perspective of a government, it was the wrong answer. The answer from the government's perspective about tourism was jobs, jobs, and jobs, regeneration, and tax revenue. And one of the lessons I learned in the UK, and if people are thinking of investing in the UK, this is, I think, still a relevant message. As is always the case with governments, which is you need to try and speak their language, not expect them to learn yours. And so I think if you're looking at investing in the UK, in the tourism sector, the job story is central. I'm not saying that it's a unique UK story, but that's how you get in sneak in under the wire. I suspect investing in unsustainable, if you will, projects is not going to float anyone's boat. So sustainability, but jobs first and foremost. And may I make one other observation, which is that I was in the north of England, in Northumberland, over the weekend. And I went to a Scandinavian restaurant next to Hadrian's Wall and had the best meal I've ever had in my too many years on this earth. No, plenty of years on this earth.
Yeah.
And that is a new opening. Let me tell you, it was, price points were up with the best of London. The food was even better. There, and when you looked at here's the interesting thing, when you looked in the car park, which in the north of England is always a telling sign, what are the cars? And the answer was, this was not what someone had once described to me as the secret of success in a restaurant in Yorkshire, is to find a car park, put up a piece of plate glass, let people look at their cars and serve them anything that you want. This was the reverse. The cars were not great cars, but the people inside were paying serious money for an exceptional experience. I think that is quintessentially where some of the opportunities are in the UK. There is still money. It's not as flash as it used to be, but it's interested in experiences. It has been for a number of years. And if you've got an experience that is special and you're creating jobs, then you've got a story to tell. Sorry, long answer.
No, that's absolutely, that's interesting. So you're looking for, as you say, new experiences, things that are unique, distinctive, because we've got lots of everything else in this country, and find something that's, as you say, that offers something different.
Well, you know, one underpin of that is the arts area, which I have some exposure to over the years. And to take the simple version of it, London theatre is extraordinary. I mean, there's the great Broadway and there's London theatre. And it is, I think, the best in the world because of both its quality and its breadth and its variety. So that's something that is available in Britain. People come to see it. We do take it around the world. But people come to London. If they're coming to London, they come to see what's on. And interestingly, other cities like Manchester and Edinburgh, I mean, Edinburgh with the festival for years, have created go-to attractions.
Let's talk about this, because, and it touches on what we're going to talk about in the next panel, which is kind of regional partnerships and how you can make it not just about one particular place being the attraction, i.e. London. You could possibly add Edinburgh to that, as you said, and maybe Bath. In terms of the tourist trail, how do we make sure in the future that tourists do go to other parts outside, off the beaten track, as it were? Because that is important, isn't it?
James Bond, Spectre, a lesser known part of the Highlands of Scotland, boom. Dan Brown's Medici, Lincoln Cathedral, boom. Film tourism.
It's that influential.
It's that simple. If you can get someone to do a documentary, do a film in an area that people don't know and it looks attractive, they want to go and find it out. It works. I mean,
the other thing is, if I can interject, is that I know, for example, that Chinese tourists that come to the UK go to particular places which they know about in China and which have a special connection with them.
And the Japanese do in the Yorkshire Dales. The Germans go down to Cornwall because of the there's a writer whose name I forget, Rosamund Pilcher. Thank you, just had to start it. Could you be my coach during this? Italy, although some would say Italy doesn't need any help, but Under the Tuscan Sun, there are seminal films that get, and San Francisco was Carl Morden in an American Express ad called The Streets.
Yeah.
After doing a TV program called Streets of San Francisco. Yeah. Yul Brynner in New York.
I'm thinking of Notting Hill.
I am. I lived there in my life.
Notting Hill benefited massively, didn't it? From it already was a pretty okay area, but that film.
Well, back in 1958, when I moved in, it was not quite.
It was quite a rough area. Yeah.
But you're saying
that's a great
example.
Yeah.
I mean, I talk about film tourism. There's the aficionados of film and creative industries. Jack Warner made a film in the 50s called The Blue Light, which was about Portobello Road and that general environment. And all I'll say is it wasn't just because it was black and white that you didn't really want to go. And that's now hip, and the housing prices have gone berserk. The hotel prices, I stayed in a hotel there recently, an inexpensive one, £260 a night. I mean, that was a whole lodging house's income for a week.
Yeah, yeah.
If you put money, but doing it on your own is difficult. Clusters. People need more than one. For me, the best example, the people I always thought had the toughest job, for which I had the most admiration, was the Northern Irish Tourist Board during the Troubles. Because there was a lot of TV about Northern Ireland, and it wasn't what TV you wanted. And they kept the faith. And if you go back to Belfast now and see what they've done with the Titanic, what the National Trust has done there, what other hoteliers have done, they have made it, if people are still doing weekend destinations, they've turned it into a fabulous weekend destination.
Yeah. Just sticking on this point of if you like, the image of the UK and its future image, perhaps, which this government and perhaps many others want to be seen as being more green and more environmentally conscious. But in terms of the image of the UK, in your experience, when you were going around the world, was it still the Queen, royal palaces, old buildings, and snow, possibly?
Smog.
And smog, sorry.
China, smog, and Sherlock Holmes.
Yeah.
Tony Blair's Cool Britannia was a marketing misstep. That was not what the audience, target audience, or the repeat audience wanted to hear as a replacement to traditional Britain. But what we do well, and we were, at least when I was involved, we were working at reinforcing, is that this is a unique combination of Tudor buildings, a monarchy that survived longer than most. We used to have to say, and you can have nice food when you leave the country. We don't have to say that anymore, not just where I was in Northumberland. I mean, the food here is extremely good. There's a wide variety of things you can do. And what people like when you do the research is they like the mix.
Right.
They like to be able to go to the Tower of London and then go and see Matilda.
Yeah.
That's a great combination for
right.
24 hours.
But how do you get those same tourists to leave London and then go and explore areas perhaps which are less well trodden?
It has been a continuing challenge. There was, as I left Visit Britain a little while ago, there was a major investment fund to do just that and do joined up attractions. And the statistics have been encouraging. One of the things that's important to remember about the UK market is that about 70% is repeat visitors. So it's a bit like the old Guinness advertisement, I don't like it, I've never tried it. When they come and they like it a lot, and they typically will come back. The trick is to get them to be early bird visitors, young visitors who come back repeatedly.
Earlier on, you talked about if you're investing in the UK, in a sense you're investing in jobs is really what we should be thinking about.
That's what the people whose support you want as an investor are thinking about.
Yeah. One thing that's so clear in this country, and I'm sure you thought about this a lot, is the problem that we have in this country of staffing in the hospitality sector. Now, people say that COVID had a big, obviously, influence in that because nothing was happening, so young people, for example, didn't go into that industry. Brexit had a big effect on that because lots of European workers over here were forced to leave, and they were the ones that were basically staffing an awful lot of the hotels and restaurants. Is there, do you think, in this country, a good enough sense of service culture?
I got terribly taken to tasked by Gordon Brown for once suggesting that leaving bits of human detritus in soap dishes was not a good experience. There'd been a story at the time. You can't talk about that. I said, well, if you don't talk about service delivery, people won't understand that that's important for their success. I mean, I do think the internet has helped. That was a rubbish experience. 1 out of 10 does get, I mean, I know everyone says, well, some of them are fake. I don't think consumers, for the most part, are that innocent. You can read a grumpy person and you get a balance. And there are, of course, there are people who buff up their own product and shouldn't. But I think the expectation of service has risen. I think there's a more fun, what you're touching on is relevant, because I believe that the UK is no different from any other country, which is you hire for attitude and teach for skill, not the other way around. But I think that there is an issue, and it's not just a tourism issue. There is an issue in this country, and I'm told in other countries right now, which is as we come out of COVID, there's a large group of people, quite often at the lower end of the employment market, who are asking why they're spending their time doing what they were doing and don't want to go back to the same mix of responsibilities. And those who do want to go back, you're seeing real wage inflation. I mean, one thing, in many respects, this is a marvelous thing, that COVID explained to people, showed people in the sharp end who had to do important service delivery that was always taken for granted, that they were no longer being taken for granted. People would clap them and applaud them. And it suddenly dawned on them that they could say, well, if that's the case, you can pay me more. And that's what's happening in the job market.
And you're talking there about the care industry and the National Health Service, for example. But are you saying that the same applies to hospitality, that there will inevitably be higher wage demands because they can't get the staff, and therefore possibly higher prices as well, to pass on?
Well, I've never seen a really poor farmer. I've never seen a hotelier or restaurateur who wants long-term margin compression. They're in the people that they may love what they do, but they're not running a charity. I think there's a real, whether this is the winter of our discontent or just some pretty challenging times, people are not going into a winter season with their cash stocks full. So there's some real pressure around, and there will be resistance to paying more. I mean, minimum wage has gone up, which is $1,000. I heard someone saying that's £1,000 a year per capita. That's painful enough. People who are, I mean, I was talking today, this isn't a frontline tourism job, but I was with a company that I'm involved in, and they needed a not a finance director, a management accountant for a small enterprise, charitable enterprise, 70,000. What? It used to be 40. People who are good are asking for the money, and there are enough holes that you need good people. I mean, I think the thing that comes out of this is how far down the road of particularly in mid-level or lower cost hotels, how far down the road do you go to the old Accor product Formula, where there wasn't a human being in sight. You checked yourself in, got into your pod, and someone came and hosed it down the next day. And the labour intensity, the labour component of service industries is going to come under pressure. And the question is, for the upper end of the market, I think people still pay, because if you're going to a 5-star property, you don't expect lines, you do expect service, you expect a concierge who knows what they're doing. If you're going to a 2-star, a good 2-star, and they exist, then you want to see a lot more self-service automation. And the questions have changed. I mean, it used to be, I remember when I was on the board of Hilton, having a discussion with people about the role of the concierge, who back in the day, before the internet took off, felt like a differentiating asset. So Hilton had good concierge. You could put, in Munich next weekend, these things are going on. Get rid of your marginal room, unsold rooms. You want to find out what's going on now, do you speak to the concierge? Maybe to get a booking in a difficult place. But you've done all your homework online beforehand. So the dynamics of the industry are changing.
Okay. I still want to push this point, though, because everyone talks about the service and tourism being the future. The hospitality industry is, to a large extent, a very fast-growing industry still. It will be, and it is, going to be a big source of employment for a lot of people, regardless of technology. I understand that, but I come back to my fundamental point, because of the exodus of so many people who work in that industry at the high level or any level really, does more need to be done in this country to train people in hospitality?
To get people to want to go into hospitality.
Yes, that too. Yes.
But that's the issue. I mean, I remember talking with some students who got their degrees from the University of Surrey, which is one of the best tourism schools in Europe, the world standard. First of all, I was doing the graduation ceremony, and I think I handed out scrolls to 200 people, of whom I think 30 were British. So that told you, nice piece of export work by the University of Surrey, or overseas selling, but there were only 30 Brits.
Yeah.
And when I was speaking to the Brits, I said, well, what did your career teacher say when you said you were going to do tourism? And the answer was, in more than one case, don't worry, you'll get a better job in the end. And I think you have to get people to understand that you can have a career in tourism. In fact, you get responsibility in tourism younger than many places. If you work for JP Morgan Chase, believe me, Jamie Dimon makes all the big decisions and a few other people make some important decisions. And if you're a frontline branch manager, you salute and do what you're told.
Yeah, yeah.
Hopefully with a smile. If you run a branch of All Bar One or Nando's, you're given quite a lot of authority and responsibility. You learn people skills pretty quickly, because if you don't have anyone in at all. I think you can teach this. The question is whether people want to learn.
Want to do it, which maybe goes back to a fundamental aspect of the kind of British psyche almost, when it comes to service culture. You do wonder that, because what's interesting is that we're talking about so many parts of the world in this week in WTM, and so many countries have willing labour who want to get into that world of industry and service. They have a culture and history of it, and the opposite problem is kind of happening here.
Well, I think that's the not perfect comparison. I was in Barcelona and Girona a weekend ago for a birthday, and my wife and daughter both said, consistently the service culture was evident, and it felt warm and natural. I think what is wrong is to assume it can't be done in the UK. In my experience, it can be done. You can get customer service, but you have to failure to get customer service is poor recruitment, poor training, and if those two are happening, it's poor leadership.
Yep. So when we talk about infrastructure here and why it might be attractive to investors, I suspect, outside investors, I think you're agreeing with me, that we have to get to the fundamental skills issue of people actually in this country who want to work in this industry.
Yeah. But there are, and some of the most successful people in the industry came to the British Isles, and they worked through the system. And maybe those of us who are old and grey and have master's degrees in business have to explain to people why this is a career which is entirely appropriate.
Yeah.
And I do think you are right. I'm not here as a government spokesman. I do think there is a case of, in certain places, of snobism about this is beneath me.
Yeah.
That's service. And every great service person I've seen doesn't do rank, they do customer first. And you don't see, the great people you don't see going, I am the chief executive of this big organization. I will not pick up that suitcase. If there's something that the suitcase needs to be moved, good leaders will go and pick it up, however senior they are. Even Gerald picks up suitcases.
Even Gerald picks up...
Mine's at the back of the room if you...
Thank you, because I think that's a very crucial period. We've only got a little bit of time left, but I do know, obviously, in your role as chairman of the Maritime and Coastguard Agency now, and in your previous role with the Ports Authority, what do you see as being the kind of future of cruises? I mean, that is an interesting area.
Future of cruises, demand side, it's recovering. I mean, there is a particular issue about being cooped up on a boat with people who might be ill, but that will pass as people get jabbed. I think you will see, well, you're going to see shore power dealt with quickly. It is often exaggerated. I mean, if you don't have shore power, the amount of noxious emissions that come out from a parked small cruise liner are, compared to the noxious emissions from cars on the road, de minimis. But you try telling that to a person who's living in a block of flats overlooking the Thames, looking at the belching funnel. So I think...
You try telling that to people in Barcelona who are seeing the cruise liners...
And Venice.
Yeah, and Venice.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I think there's a challenging market. But I think, I mean, the really interesting thing in maritime is the replacement cycle's 30 years. Not, you want an electric car, change your car every 5 to 7 years. A lorry, maybe 9 to 10. Ships, 30.
Yep.
We are building now the ships that will still be in operation in 2050. And here's your statistic to send you away to do a little COP moment. Maritime is forecast to grow to double by 2050. The target was 50% of the previous emission level. So times 2, we've got to get rid of 75% of the emission.
On cruise ships?
On maritime.
On maritime generally, yeah. Yeah.
And nuclear will come back.
Is your projection, is your theory?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, with
because
that...
hydrogen goes bang.
Okay. I think the gentleman in the audience there might disagree with you, who's got the airship thing going here. But, Christopher, on that very interesting point to end, thank you very much indeed for joining us.
I should say one thing.
Go on.
If I was investing in tourism, I'd like to think that I might be able to deal with some of the issues you said. I would still invest here. The language is widely accepted. The overall product is good. The experience is good. If you have 77% repeat visitors, we're doing something right. So if you're thinking about investing, the trick in this country is to find the right product in the right place, but 'twas ever thus. It's different from an underdeveloped market. I think you just have to make that distinction. It's not a straight comparison with a developing tourism economy.
Yeah.
This is an established tourism economy. The other thing to think about, last point, is this is still a market in which, for many investors, domestic is the key question. The international market, 28 billion. The domestic market in England alone, 72.
I didn't know that. Is that
well? We talk a huge amount, thanks to the work WTTC does, about international tourism, cross-border tourism, a billion people, etc. If you're running a bed and breakfast or a small hotel in Devon, you will not be dependent on Japanese visitors. You're dependent on people coming from Birmingham.
Yeah, yeah.
And so both that's the market, but it's also the supply, because not everyone goes away every weekend overseas. And I do think that weekend trips, with the logistical problems that we now have, are going to be under pressure. That's going to be not the 4 times a year thing that it was. I think they'd like us.
Thank you. Yep. Thank you very much, Christopher. Christopher Rodrigues. Thank you.